Spotlight, as introduced by the BBA department, I think is a great initiative as it's very relevant in today's world. And students have always been in a very academic world, while this orients them with the practicality of events. And that's why I think it's very appropriate, and it helps students who are in their final year and other years of college to transition into a more practical world. And that's why I think Spotlight is very appropriate, and it's basically transcending academic to practical.
Spotlight is a brilliant initiative by the JBC, the Josephite Business Club. I think it really gives the students a feel of what an actual discussion is like. Okay, getting the alumni involved also adds in a bit of a flavor of the outside world. It really expands perspectives. It was a pretty cool initiative. I'd like to see this expand a little more. I'd like to see different topics come up, and I want to see how the students will react to that. But currently, for the first episode of it, brilliant job, brilliant idea specifically, and well executed. Good job.
Okay. My name is Rona, and I'm the president of Josephite Business Club. The reason why we started Spotlight is because we thought it was essential to give the students of the BBA department a platform where they can talk about current issues, they can express their views on them, and they can develop a mindset of problem solving and solution seeking. And that is what we seek to achieve with Spotlight. We want to put these videos out there so that students all over the world can see what Josephites are capable of. And I hope that this grows into something really big.
Hello ladies and gentlemen, my name is Mario Devaz and I am currently seated in St. Joseph's College of Commerce for the first ever edition of Spotlight, presented to you by the Josephite Business Club. That is the BBA department of St. Joseph's College of Commerce has decided to put together a little bit of a debate, more of a discussion rather, on a topic very dear to all of our hearts. Okay, and no points for guessing what that topic's going to be. It is demonetization, something that is run through this country like wildfire, and everyone seems to have an opinion on it. On November 8th, in fact, Prime Minister Narendra Modi made a massive announcement stating that rupees 500 and 1000 rupee notes will no longer be in use. This is widely recognized as a landmark economic decision. And the country is still trying to grasp this. How are they going to react to something this massive? With me, I have the students of St. Joseph's College of Commerce, their BBA department in specific, and I have well-known and renowned members of the alumni of this prestigious institution. We're here to find out what they have to say. All right, so do you guys want to say hi? Hi? Okay, we got some smiles. We got some almost smiles. That's close enough. I'm going to keep going with this. Let's ask them what they think, what they thought about the first time they heard the term demonetization. What did you all think about the moment that announcement was made? All right, anyone has an opinion straight off the bat? We got someone to talk.
I thought of the barter system the first time I heard about demonetization.
The good sir says the barter system. That's something we heard about when we were in about second grade. Do you wanna explore that a little more? Do you want to expand on that?
See, when you look at the word demonetization, it has the word monetization in it. And the meaning of the word monetization is to turn something to legal tender. And when you demonetize it, it's no more legal tender. And in the notification that was, passed, it had the word removal of legal tender, and it had words like black money, or not black money, unaccounted value. It had terrorism. Now, I felt that these two words should not have been in the same sentence, because when you look at legal tender, okay, it represents a form of settlement, and black money had the word money in it only when it represented currency. But now there's black assets. So I don't think they should have been used in the same sentence, if you ask me, because it's a legal tender, and its most primary function is to facilitate settlement of any economic transaction. It's not even secondary or tertiary. Black comes way after. I think primarily it is legal tender, and they should not have been in the same sentence to begin with. But a majority of our country, around of the 130 crore, which is our population, about 80-something crore represents agricultural India, where settlements are in the form of cash. The thought of going digital isn't in their mind. And when you take away the main form of settlement, they will go back to the barter system. And a lot of these areas are secluded from technology and other advancements that we are experiencing right now. And there are villages also in various parts of India that have done it, like places in Gujarat. So that's what I thought of. It's a democracy, and when you take such experiments, not a decision, when you take such experiments, you don't consider the value of the change. I mean, the value does matter, but you consider the number that's affected. And I think that's what should have been considered, and that's why I think it is barter.
What is your name, sir?
My name is Rahul Nixon.
Okay, so Rahul Nixon decides that the country is regressing back to barter, and he makes a very fair argument. Okay, and I would give you a call out for that because he has made sense. But I'd love to hear if someone thinks differently. Does anyone else think differently? Yes, we have someone else.
I think after Rahul's skyrocket comments, I'm gonna bring everyone down to the earth. I really thought it was I was at a wedding actually, at my sister's wedding, and I really thought it was a fake WhatsApp message. Not kidding. It's quite common that everyone sends out fake WhatsApp messages for all this. So I didn't expect someone to take such a bold move for a country as large as India. Obviously, the quantum of economic transactions that go through using cash settlement, using currency notes such as 500s and thousands, it's enormous, right? So I honestly believed it was just a fake thing, but it's what happened, yeah.
So when we heard about this decision, I thought it is a really ridiculous decision by the government because it will lead to a lot of panic and chaos. The very first thing was since petrol bunks were accepting the old demonetized notes, so we thought that go fill all our full tank in all the petrol bunks, and also there was hour-long queues in front of ATM to withdraw and to deposit as well.
That's controversial. Anyone else? Yeah, I'm gonna come to you all 1, 2, 3. All right?
Thanks. Yeah, so I've got a little bit of a different perspective to this since I wasn't in the country at the time that this move took place. I was in New York at the time, and I heard about this news, and I was pretty shocked that such a huge decision was taken because we've for 2 decades within living in India, we've never seen a government take such a drastic maneuver that will affect the daily lives. So I realized that this was a gutsy move by the administration of India to take a move which will affect the daily lives of its own voter base. So we normally see moves not taken in India because we are afraid that we will not get re-elected. So I thought that my first reaction was this is a gutsy move. And whether this pays off or not, it'll still go down as one of the most bold moves taken by any administration, at least in my lifetime. On the contrary, though, I thought that this was something that would be beneficial in the long term, but I also knew that in the short term, it would be a huge inconvenience for people, to sort of even go about their daily lives. So I was wondering how the implementation would take place and what are the follow-up maneuvers, follow-up measures that would be taken by the government itself. But for me, I thought in the long term, this move will be one of the moves that will be traced back and said this is where India really made progress and really took a step in terms of curbing of black money and curbing funding for the black economy that is very prevalent within this nation. And I think the last point that I'd like to make is that only 1% of this country pays taxes. And that I find appalling for a country of 1.2 billion people. That only 1% of the country is paying taxes. And this is something that is something that we all read about, that people hoard money. But to the extent the population that only pays taxes for 1%, that I find ridiculous. That we expect so much from the government, but so few of us actually contribute to the economy.
Yeah. Just before getting on to something else, we've had quite a few statements being made there. 1% of our population pays taxes, and we do think we have an individual here who thinks that this was quite a brave move, quite a adventurous move, and I could see faces nodding in disapproval. Okay, you don't need to be shy about that. But just before we get onto that, and just before we get onto the fact that the individual here brought up 130 crore people, and over 50% of them are in an agricultural base and don't have the ability to adapt to this. Okay, so those are topics that we are going to get back into. Hold on.
Okay, so your question was how did we react to it and how did we handle it? So when I first heard about it, I was shocked. I couldn't believe what I read on my WhatsApp message. I checked BBC, I checked all the Indian news channels to make sure that it was true. That being said, how did I handle it? I did not handle it well at all. I went to my cupboard immediately, took out all the money that I'd been saving from all the gifts that my parents, my grandparents have been giving me, and I thought, how will I convert this? How will I use this money? Is it going to be redundant now? I'd never deposited it in the bank because I wanted it to be as liquid as possible so that I could buy something. And considering that I'm a college student, I'm in college till about 4 in the evening every day. After that, I work sometimes till 8 o'clock. How will I get my money back? So I didn't react well at all. I was panicking, etc. That being said, very shortly, I realized that 2,000 rupee notes were going to be issued. I didn't understand the concept after that. Because if you need X amount of space to hoard black money, with 2,000 rupee notes being issued now, you need X divided by 2 amount of space. What does that mean? You can hoard even more money than possible. So that's what I thought of initially. That's my view.
So that would essentially be the elimination of black money and the rebirth of it in a much easier way. Okay, anyone else to have a last say on this one?
So the effect that it had on me was me running to the ATM to withdraw cash in 100 rupee notes. And another thing about the gutsy government and stuff, only an authoritarian government can calmly cause such a huge chaos. Like, we expect our government to, make sure that we have some form of stability when we have cash in our hand. And what happened was completely opposite. We had cash and we didn't know whether we were rich or poor anymore. Like, it was utter chaos. Like, even in front of lines. I live in a semi-urban area where there are a lot of rural people, and they were ready to accept 500 rupee notes because they didn't know what was happening. And that was and honestly a sad thing to see, because that's when I realized that awareness of this move is a challenge.
Okay, I'm gonna get back to y'all in just a second, because what you just said made me think about something. The 2,000 rupee notes. Okay, all of y'all have seen it, right? I'm gonna ask y'all a simple question first. How many of y'all like the way it looks? It's irrelevant, I know, but how many of y'all like the way it looks? Yeah. Okay, that's just a comment on your personal style. But all right, how many of y'all like the concept of 2,000 rupee notes? How many of y'all think it's practical? Yeah. Okay, we have some bold hands go up. I'm gonna come to you in a bit. I want to.
So when I think of the 2,000 rupee notes, I really don't care about how it looks. I just think that as an added value to how much like a single rupee, like a note can hold. So if you look at like the foreign direct investments and everything, the maximum they had was 1,000 rupee notes, and I think that served as an inconvenience. And I think that 2,000 rupee notes can serve convenient to those who need it.
Awesome.
Honestly speaking, I think the liquidity of that note is not very high, considering the fact that a lot of 500s firstly were discarded, and the new notes were not yet available, and secondly, not many people had those hundreds. So if I go withdraw from an ATM and I get a 2,000 bucks note, I go buy, let's say, grocery, yeah, and I pay the cart guy or the vegetable vendor a 2,000 rupee note. He's obviously not gonna give me hundreds, he's not gonna give me 1800s. So I think because of which a lot of small vendors, a lot of markets like are what is the market next to us? Avenue Road, yeah, for example, Chamrajpet, Chickpet, yeah, all those people, they make a living out of these cash currency, and once the 2,000 rupee note loses that liquidity, I think it was very hard on them.
So getting back to that, one thing that was stated was the actual practicality of this 2,000 rupee note. What was the point of it when it made a lot of our lives harder? Yeah, okay, you guys have anything to add on? I see heads nodding in approval. Okay, I'm going to pass it on.
One practical experience of having 2,000 rupee notes was that I went out one day with a 2,000 rupee note. It was not being accepted anyway, neither in branded clothes shop or in any ice cream parlors. Also, my friend Arya here said that in the long term it is good. But I would like to quote the father of microeconomic theory, John Keynes, who said that in the long term we all are dead. I think the short-term implication is worse. People have died. People have been traumatized. They were not able to use their own hard-earned money. And if the government says they demonetize it due to hoarding of black money, won't 2,000 rupees make it more easier to hoard black money? And also, I feel that it was a strategic move by the government where they informed all their associates and people associated with them much earlier. I do feel it is a strategic move by the government to win election.
Right. So I'm going to quickly counter some of the points made. So he made a quote by John Maynard Keynes. Let's remember that John Maynard Keynes died in the 1700s. So thinking of that nature has died centuries ago. So let's keep those thoughts aside and think about what this really means. Let's think about inflation. What can 2,000 rupees buy you today? Is the value of 100 rupees that we had in the past the same today? No, it is not. We are moving into a generation where we're importing more goods. We're importing goods of a higher value. So the same rupee of 2,000 in 20 years' time will be what is required to be able to make small purchases or make decent level of purchases. So it is not a move that is going to take away. Right now, if you really think of in a short 2 year, 3 years context, yeah, it seems inconvenient. Why do we need a 2,000 rupee note? But if you think in terms of if you factor in inflation, put in over a 10-year period, then you will see how the 2,000 rupee note will be much more valuable. And the same people 10 years from now will be thinking, why were we using 1,000 rupee notes in the first place? So I think what needs to be factored in terms of economics is inflation, and that will and the value of the real value of money. And that's something that will be a factor in the future. So again, coming back to the long-term portion of it and to address some of the issues, I do understand that it is difficult in today's context to really use the note and gain currency in exchange. But that is because there is a lack of currency today. But this is being addressed by the government, and I think a major benefit is that it's got the technology within it where you can trace the notes and the location. And I think that's a huge benefit because in the past we just don't know where the money went. Where is the money being hoarded? And finally, because of the technology, we can track the location of the notes. And that's something that will really give context to where is the money in the economy going. And that's something that's a huge benefit to tackle corruption and hoarding of money in the future.
That is something to think about. I'm going to pass the mic on to just a couple more people. And then we're going to move on to a larger discussion, yeah?
I just wanted to point out a factual inaccuracy in what Arya said. The whole thing about the notes being traceable was actually traced back to Baba Ramdev, a WhatsApp forward that he spread to popularize the demonetization move. Even the finance ministry and the RBI have confirmed that the notes are not traceable in any way. They are the same old notes, and in fact there have been glaring discrepancies between one note and the other in the way that the typography has been printed and the alignment. So it doesn't fix any new problems with any new technology or anything like that.
That's another strong statement to make. That's going straight up against it. How many of y'all think these notes are actually traceable? I know Arya does. You do too. Okay.
This isn't anything to do about traceability, etc. This is just simply about the convenience of the 2,000 rupee note. Okay, with respect to India's history, we started off with an anna or base. We don't even know how much we started off with, but the oldest currency I know is the anna, and now we have progressed to a 2,000 rupee note. Being the sixth biggest economy in the world, I don't see why we can't come to terms where we can use a 2,000 rupee note. It's just going to take some time, and yes, it might take a lot of time. But I'm sure that we might be able to come to consensus with a 2,000 rupee note.
In a recent interview that P. Chidambaram gave, all right, he said that even the 1,000 rupee note is irrelevant economically speaking. If you look at inflation numbers at the moment, the 500 rupee note is appropriate. And if you make a high value transaction, you're most likely not going to use a note. That's when digital payment is more facilitative, right? And I'll tell you why a 2,000 rupee note or any other note was introduced. If you take some black money or unaccounted money and go to the bank, and if you pay the penalty and they give you back the same notes, you can keep going back with unaccounted money and keep claiming that it was the money that you withdrew first is constantly being deposited back. The whole point was to give a new currency so that you cannot deposit the same thing again. That's why not just a 2,000 rupee note, any other denomination would have served the purpose. So that's why any note was introduced. It wasn't to tackle inflation or meet inflation. 500 rupee note is very sufficient for inflation, and any larger transactions would be met by electronic means. And if you look at about 70% of our population is in agriculture, all right? And a few of them do have bank accounts. So when they make large purchases like their fertilizers, larger like machinery, they would use digital settlements. But for like your general pesticides and labor, the settlements were in cash. So I think 500 is appropriate right now, and the 2000 rupee note is just a sort of a debit card that you will somehow make change for or redeposit. So that was another perspective. So when people get the 2000 rupee notes, no one in the right mind in our economy is going to go and exchange or gain some sort of economic benefit for a 2000 rupee note. They will redeposit. And what will they do once it's redeposited? The finance ministry believes that they will use digital means. So this 2000 rupee was nothing but the 2000 rupee note the objective was give it to them so that they give it back and use digital currency. There's no settlement like used for it.
So we heard quite a bit on the 2000 rupee note. The practicality of it is still being questioned quite a bit. I heard from one person basically that the 2000 rupee note is a good thing, but like Nixon said, what's currently being used, the people who are making the larger purchases and need to spend that much amount of money have bank accounts and can do it digitally. But let's move on to a different topic, shall we? So all of you all have been affected by this, correct? All of you all have been. How do you think the masses, India as a whole, okay, this decision, how did it affect the country? Our country is huge, 1.2 billion people, all right? Now think about the different stratas of society within our country. Think about the one that y'all are currently in, and think about the ones that y'all see when y'all walk on the street. And we sitting in Bangalore have a visualization of that. Think about the ones in the rural portions of the country as well. All right? Yes.
I think, if anything, demonetization has been extremely successful at exposing middle-class privilege more than black money in the society, because we have the habit of justifying this by calling it a minor inconvenience when we don't know ground realities in rural areas. It is a fact that cash is not going to the rural areas anymore. The cash supply has completely been cut off from them. We have the 2000 rupee note here, and we voluntarily choose to not withdraw the 2000 rupee note when it's the only thing left in the ATM. So we have become extremely apathetic to the rural and lower middle class societies who depend on cash completely, just because we use Paytm and we use our debit cards to transact. It's easy for us to go cashless. I wasn't at the ATM withdrawing money on the day of demonetization, but I strongly believe that we have become completely desensitized to what the rural person faces. Even the government has noticed this, and I feel personally that the only response that they have given to this is urban appeasement and propaganda. They have not answered any questions that the rural person has, not addressed the deaths that have been caused by this, and almost nothing has been done to fix the cash crunch.
That's a pretty strong statement. I'm going to come to all of you all. Hold on.
Most of us in India, there's a large population that lives on the basis of daily wages, and there's also a good population that's illiterate. So for them, this entire, I think, demonetization came for them like, oh, we don't have any money left. So I think they were unaware that the money that they have is their money. It's just that the form has changed. So I think them being unaware of that caused various problems to them, including, I heard a lot of suicides and etc.
So defending the point that she made, what's the biggest problem we faced like after demonetization? It was going to the ATM, standing in a queue. We cribbed about standing in a queue. But think about the problem the rural people face. If they need to, even if they are educated, let's assume they're educated, and they need to go and get that form of money, even if it's like on an ATM or a card or something, they have to go to the nearest town, which is still far. And imagine the inconvenience it's caused to them, because they have to work every day in order to get some living out of it. And this is just hindering their progress. We just script to stand in lines or to like get some change for $2,000. But imagine how much it means to them.
Let me divide this into phases for y'all, make that a little easier. Let's talk about short term right now, because all of us, a lot of y'all are college students, okay? A lot of y'all have only seen about 20 years of existence, and y'all are probably going to talk about the next 2 or 3 years. Let's talk about that first, and then we'll see how our children are going to benefit from this. Yeah.
So, talking about in the long term, I just have one statement to make. In the long term, everything will look positive if you want to look at it in a very optimistic way. And if you want to look at it in a realistic way, you can go either way. So, talking about short term, the now, we have to come in face with reality when we say the economy is going through a all-time low right now. A lot of people, the masses, are getting affected. The people who, probably the government expected all the black money hoarders to actually stand in the ATM queues, whereas that is not the reality. The daily wage earners who are supposed to go and work, they are standing in the queues, and it's having a very adverse effect on them. And I think that's what we need to focus on, because this is literally paralyzing a lot of people and the economy in the long run and the short run as well.
Okay, Arya, I want to hear from you.
So, I mean, despite being in favor of the move as a whole, I feel there's two different things. You've got to differentiate that. One is the concept of the move, and second is the execution of the move. So I believe that the execution of the move has been poor, that there have been shortcomings of the move. People, the banks were not prepared to face the cash crunch that just happened. There wasn't enough cash available in the rural areas. A lot of people in those areas faced a lot of hardships because of it. People even today are going through a lot of hardships due to the same. So definitely in the short term, in terms of execution, this move has been poor. And there have been a lot of shortcomings in terms of the move. There was a very short period of time where it got implemented. There wasn't enough cash given to the banks. There wasn't enough cash given to ATMs in rural areas. There weren't enough ATMs in rural areas to even begin with. So I believe that despite being in favor of the concept of the move, the execution of the move in the short term has been lacking.
So that's a statement that means it's something that a lot of us have been saying. The execution was all over the place. Okay, and I'm going to throw out another question at you all. Make this simple. Okay, the execution of how the government went about doing this. Okay, a lot of us were really, to put it simply, were annoyed by the fact that we had to go through this. Okay, so I'm going to go back to what Nixon said earlier today. Nixon mentioned that our population of 130 crore individuals have a large percentage of that, more than majority, in fact, who aren't utilizing this, who aren't in a position to utilize this at all. Okay, we have a contrasting opinion here saying that, you know what, this is going to be the future. This is what our future looks like. Okay, I want you all to compare. He made a very good point as well. His point was very valid, and the way he put it forth was impressive. But I want to hear, in contrast to that, what was said earlier, how many of y'all think our future is in fact online payments? Now think about our country. Think about the economy of our country. Think about the salaries pulled in, wages. I'm going to throw in wages. Okay? Think about that pulled in by the individuals of our country, and think about how practical it is that our future will move online. Yeah.
So recently I was in Rajasthan, in Jaisalmer to be specific, and I was staying in this hostel, and I was speaking to these guys who are running these hostels. So I asked them, he said that you need to pay by cash. I said, you know what, I don't have enough cash now. I can pay through Paytm, or I can do a wire transfer. The guy said, I don't have a bank account. So I'm like, why do you not have a bank account? You're running a hostel. Everyone's coming to you. You have so many foreigners. You have so many tourists coming and staying. Why do you not have a bank account? So this is what he exactly said. I think banks are robbers. If I put in my money in banks, I don't think so that I'll get it back. What if someone robs the bank? What am I going to do then? Yeah. So unless we change that mentality, the thought process of the rural India, which is obviously a majority at the moment. We obviously staying in cities are unaware of these thoughts, right? We are unaware of these thoughts. But the way they think, and unless and until we change that thought process, we're not going to move ahead. And optimistically speaking, I think that giving a number to that change in thought process would be a good 25 to 30 years.
Yeah, see, digital payments or online payments are effective, but only when the market is online, okay? When there is a market that is tangible and exists, like you can see the market, there is no sense in having a digital payment. You are still going to go there. You might as well pay in cash or in currency or in any other form or any digital payment. So as long as the market is not digital, there is no sense to have a digital payment. You get what I'm saying? Because when the market is online, facilitates settlement. But here there's no difference at all. There is no saving of time, and only when time is saved because of digital settlements, there is more time for productivity. So as long as there's a tangible market, which will remain for quite some time because 70% of our population is agriculture, and agriculture, these transactions generally take place at the spot. So as long as that is there, digital payments are not very effective because, there are alternatives that you could switch to.
That is quite something to say, in fact. But anyone else? Yeah, I want to see hands up. Who wants to talk about this? Yeah, I'm gonna start.
Just to add on to what they say, I feel that cashless economy is not possible in a country like India. The first reason is due to uneducation. A lot of people don't know how the cashless and banking system works. Second reason, think of people with hand-to-mouth living, such as a vegetable vendor, a local vegetable vendor, or a person who irons your clothes. They depend on basic cash for their everyday requirements. Imagine you going and swiping a card for just ironing a small shirt or just to buy small vegetables worth 50, 60 rupees. And first of all, they don't have smartphones. And second, even if we provide smartphones, all the server jamming, take an example of Jio. Due to a lot of millions of users, all the networks are jammed. So due to the population of India, due to uneducation, I don't think cashless economy will work out in our country. And also many developed countries has tried this model, but they have failed miserably.
One sec. I'm gonna come back. I saw a hand go up.
Okay, so a lot of people want liquid tomorrow. So let's look at a better tomorrow rather than a liquid tomorrow. So for example, if a lot of money goes into the banks, now the government has more money. Now what do they do with this tax revenue? They spend it on, they use it as public expenditure. And instead of solving the inflation rate, we can solve the unemployment rate as well. So once the government spends into infrastructure, a lot of jobs will be available, and that will solve a huge unemployment problem, which is also like really serious right now.
So I basically look at demonetization from a completely different aspect. Like, I don't look at it as just taking out 500s and 1,000 rupees and the fake notes and everything and introducing new notes. I don't look at it like that. I look at it as catching the people responsible for making those fake 500s and the fake 1,000s. You know, if you look at the kind of effect and the kind of shock after Modi's statement, if you were the person that generated fake 500s and fake 1,000s, you think, okay, what do I do now? So you kind of leave them with nothing to do, and you're trying to demotivate them from what they're trying to do, which is produce these fake notes and everything. So that's the perspective I look at it. And personally speaking, I can't say that I'm affected by demonetization, because right now I get the best of both worlds. So there's electric and there's cash as well. So it's not that much of an issue.
What's your name?
Kadesh.
Okay. So Kadesh actually spoke about the actual morals behind demonetization and whether it was effective catching who was the culprits. Okay, so this is another topic that I feel like we should in fact explore just a little bit. The culprits, black money hoarders, people who stocked up crores of money in cash and just paid an extra room, just bought an extra room or whatever they did. Okay, they had tons of it. How many of them were actually caught? Are you all saying I was caught? You have something to say? Okay. Yeah, I want to hear your thoughts on that. Was it really effective in catching people?
Coming to people having black money, first of all, I think just a very small portion is stored in black money, first of all, because most of the black money is stored in the form of either land or gold most of the time. And I think even before the demonetization came out, I think most of the people beforehand already knew about it. So I don't think it really affected most of the big people, and that's why now it's affecting most of the commoners.
I think also a significant amount of black money is yes, cash to a certain extent, but it's also the Swiss banks. It's also in putting money in other banks, etc. Foreign banks. That's what I mean. And also these. You asked how much of the population has been caught. I think it's quite a small population, because all this black money has been whitewashed into white money. Backdating of jewelry bills, of jewelry companies, of a lot of companies like this. So I think it's the Swiss banks that need to be investigated. International banks just depositing your money, you don't need to tell that other bank, a foreign bank, how you got that money. So I think that investigation needs to take place more than just cash, because a poor man can't invest his money in the Swiss bank, realistically speaking. But a rich man can do all these things, manipulate everyone, and he's the one who needs to be caught, not the poor man at the end of the day.
So a couple of things. So basically, on the concept of digital payments, I think if you go abroad, everything is digital. People barely carry cash on them, and moving towards becoming a more developed country is never a bad thing. And that's something that we need to move towards. Yes, so whether it's because there's a cash crunch in the economy that you can't use your notes or your notes are not legal tender, that you're forced to make bank accounts and thousands of people are signing up for bank accounts in tier 2 and tier 3 cities in India. And that I believe is a good thing for banks to exist in those economies, because there's a lot of money which we are not even accounted for. And to sort of go on what was being spoken about already, I believe that in terms of this is not the only move. Demonetization is the first step. After this, there are plans by the government to address gold and to address property, to have actual certificates of all of the unregistered properties all across India. So people who've now used their money and try and put it into gold, try and put it into jewelry, try and put it into property. And that is the next move by the government. And that is going to make this move more effective. So if the government is sufficiently able to get property, gold and jewelry accounted for, who actually is the owner, where is this land registered to, people use proxies and family members so finally when you have actual registration of property to the right ownership, how was this land acquired? Was the right property papers filed? Are the taxes filed for this property? So when all of the moves come into play, where gold is accounted for, jewelry is accounted for, property is accounted for, then you will see that people who try to try to get away from this move of demonetizing by investing in other areas will finally get caught in the long run when all of these other follow-up measures are enacted by the government. So the government, to make demonetization effective, needs to enact follow-up procedures on these other avenues where India does have a lot of money. It has a lot of wealth in terms of these other assets, and these assets need to be targeted next and be effectively, and the execution there needs to be better than it was in demonetization.
So coming back to your question about people getting caught because of this move, so Prime Minister Narendra Modi's response to every criticism about this move was that the Congress is going to get caught, that all these political parties that hoard black money are going to get caught. And everyone knows that political parties are probably the only people that actually hoard black money in cash, because it comes out every time there's an election rally when they're throwing money into a crowd. So the public was hopeful that with the Prime Minister making such statements, political parties are going to be the most affected by this move. Now, the law says that political parties are exempt from income tax scrutiny. Now, Narendra Modi's government has got a clear majority in parliament. If it did have the political will to actually change the law, retrospectively amend it, and actually catch political parties that have been hoarding cash, then this might have made sense. But the people that hoard cash the most in black money are getting away with this.
So that is a good point to say. So we heard about how this basically isn't that effective, and also how, what Arya said was, this was something that had to happen. It was kind of like, shut up and do it, because it's now or never. We got to change the world right now, and this is when we're going to do it. Okay? Just to add on to something about demonetization, there were chances where people managed to get out of it by simply using petrol bunks. People who own petrol bunks would pump money out into a car, fill their money back into the petrol bunk and get bills and make their money essentially legal. So the big fish who need to be caught, no one's getting them. Okay? And I'm glad that a lot of y'all are nodding along to that, because it just isn't happening. And us and the visualization that we have, we can see that it isn't happening. But like Arya said, this was something that had to happen. Okay? I'm glad we reached the consensus saying this was executed very badly. Okay? The concept might be right to all of you. Does anyone disagree by that? You don't think demonetization should have happened at all? The concept of demonetization. Okay, I want to hear that.
See, in a developing country, right, you have a policy and then you have the implementation. In a developing country, if the implementation is good, then the policy is flawed. Both go together. In a developed country, the implementation can, it may be poor, but the policy will still have effect. But in a developing country, the implementation is very integral, and that is very much part of the policy. They go together as a decision. So the decision of demonetizing wasn't very effective if the implementation wasn't good, because that was part of the decision in a developing country.
It is a good statement to make. Oh, yes, you have something to say.
Yeah, also like after 8th November, the government, hung on to how, they're progressing towards a cashless economy. And a lot of statements were, thrown about it. And I want to say that India, let's be frank about it, India is not ready for a cashless economy, considering the fact that a lot of people do not have access to banking, cards, smartphones to start with, and then we need to educate them about it. And a lot of people find all these things as an inconvenience. And speaking of inconvenience, the banks and the vendors levy a convenience charge for online payment. And each and every rupee for the real Indian, that is a rural person, every rupee makes a difference. And these inconvenience charges charged by the vendors and the banks, honestly, it's not ready. And second thing, what I want to point out is there are states that are not ready for this. Example, Jammu Kashmir, the 6 sister states of Northeast. These countries so often face a crackdown. And at that time, one of the first things that are shut are internet. The one thing you need for a cashless economy is internet. So without this, how do you think a cashless economy is going to operate in such a huge country like India?
That is a good thing to bring up, in fact. So, I'm sure most of y'all are currently functioning cashless, right? Majority of y'all are. And it's nice to say that we have the privilege to do that. Okay, we have the privilege to function cashless because we have been placed in this specific position right now. The country as a whole, is it ready for a cashless economy? By a show of hands, okay? How many of y'all think that India is ready for a cashless economy? I'm going to say country first. And I'm curious as to why you said people next. People ready for a cashless economy? But the country is? Okay, yeah. So, exactly. So, we had a statement saying that urban India is in fact ready for a cashless economy. This entire sample is probably an example of that, of how urban India is ready for a cashless economy. But India, when you're making a decision as the ruling party of the country, you affect 1.2 billion people, okay? If you're not going to be able to benefit a large majority of that, then why are you making that decision, okay? Coming back, yeah, Arya something to say, and so does...
Yeah. All right, so that's a sort of thinking that we cannot continue to live in. That just because it is inconvenient today, just because that the country is not ready today, that means it will never be ready tomorrow. So I believe that the importance of this move is not going to be felt today. But but things with moves like this is going to be, you've got to measure in the long term. You cannot measure in the short term, say, oh my God, it's so inconvenient, people aren't ready today. But if this move forces people to take bank accounts, if this move forces people to sign up for online payments, if this move forces more people into an economy which can be traceable, an economy where more taxes will be paid, where the government, where the people who've submitted their money into the banks, they will be taxed. So the government has a record of the amount and quantum of figures that you've submitted into your bank accounts. So finally, there's some accountability. For too long, we say we don't know where the money is. We can finally put the finger on where this money was. Who were the people hoarding? Where was this money going? Where did this money come from? So tomorrow, when these people, they've submitted thousands of crores into their bank accounts where they weren't paying taxes, they can be questioned. Tomorrow, the income tax department, based on their submissions, can finally go into the people where... Because what do? Do you hoard 500,000 notes that are no longer legal tender, or do you submit it and at least pay a tax on the amount? So people who've been hoarding are finally coming out and putting their money into the bank accounts. And in some cases, some people, hundreds of crores they've put into their accounts. So I feel like this move, just because we're not ready today, doesn't mean we shouldn't make the move today. Let's make the move and get people towards a direction where they can be in a position to be ready. And I feel like that sort of bold decision making is required in today's India.
So I think we should also think about the fact that why do people hoard money? So like if I ask someone and they would tell me, why do you hoard money? They'd say that I don't see the effect of the tax I'm paying in the society. I think that's also a perspective that no one has spoken about. That you don't see the 30% of the tax that you pay. I don't see it on the roads. I don't see it in the buildings. I don't see it in the infrastructure. So I think the move is good. and we shouldn't look at the fact that people are uncomfortable today because they will be comfortable tomorrow. Their children will be comfortable tomorrow. So if you complement demonetization with lesser tax rates, I think that's a good way to look at it. I think Arun Jaitley is thinking of that. I think he is looking at the fact that if we decrease tax rates and complement it with demonetization, people will be more ready, and the system by then would be more ready to go on a cashless economy.
Okay, so does anyone else want to wrap up? Okay, I'm gonna. Anything else to say at the end of it?
I think we all agree that the concept was practically needed. I think that India for a long time has been mistreated by its politicians. Until the demonetization move, we felt that the government wasn't going to do anything about corruption or black money. And when the move was announced, I too did feel a sense of hope that something was being done. The implementation was a complete letdown after that. It also proves that if you don't set in basic infrastructure prior to the move, it's not going to succeed. For instance, corruption is something that's systemic and needs to be treated before implementing such a policy, because the new notes have already started being hoarded and people have been caught with large, bunches of new notes. And without electrifying villages, and when most of India still doesn't have electricity, you can't expect them to function on a cashless economy. And I am disappointed at the end of the day, and it did start off on a hopeful note, but maybe things should have been done better.
Okay, and would you have one last thing?
We all agreed that India is not ready to be cashless now, but India soon has to do that. We have to be digital first, then we can go cashless. Because being cashless has its own perk. We can stop bribery, because every penny is accounted for, and social evils like human trafficking that won't work with cashless economy. So I would say that.
One last thing to say? Okay.
I think the past 2 months has been the Prime Minister taking a decision and the people making it right. All right. Any decision when taken, all right, it is human instinct to survive. We will survive through anything and we will adapt through anything. That doesn't make it a favorable decision. But what history will tell is that, the lives lost and like the economy and what it has faced, we will adapt. But it's the transition and what are the losses that will be reflected on in the future. So there is no such thing as a right decision. The people are making it right.
Okay, and with that, we come to an end of the first ever episode of Spotlight, presented to you by the JBC, the Josephite Business Club, straight from St. Joseph's College of Commerce, with a decent overall consensus on our opinions. This seemed to be a pretty good discussion. I hope all of you all enjoyed it. I hope everyone learned a little something new today, because I did, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.